Well, great. Hey, thanks, John. It's great talking with you. And I know you and I have had many discussions before in the past, but I wanted to get your opinion and your feedback on why it's important for manufacturing and distribution companies specifically to look into their supply chains these days, given the current state of supply chains globally.
Well, it's a very broad and important topic today. What we find is many times the supply chain monitoring and assessment has been overlooked by many companies who should be very interested in it, and as a result, they were not prepared due to all the supply chain chaos, primarily initiated by the changes caused by COVID. And what's happened is it's become a crisis for them, and they're having to spend tons of time and energy and resources, including cash, trying to help figure out ways to try and fix this problem. It's absolutely critical that it be addressed in a organized and efficient manner, and many times the persons have not had that experience doing it.
I agree completely with you. I've seen from my own experience, many of these like middle market companies are driven and operated by people from the sales organization, and the ownership has a really big influence on the sales, but the emphasis, the investment into the training, the technology on the supply chain has been lacking for years and decades, to be honest with you. And consequently, they got caught red-handed when the pandemic struck, and they were just simply not prepared. And when you talk about cash flow, I've seen so many companies from my direct experience getting caught with, for example, containers coming over from China. I have, matter of fact, talked to one company that had 60 containers stuck on the water with very little visibility or insight as to when they were going to actually receive product. That's just a killer on their cash flow, killer on their performance. And I want to hear your perspective when it comes to like M&A. You know, what does that really mean to a company when they're trying to go into M&A, which we see a lot of activity there these days?
Well, it's exactly what's happening today is that working capital in many respects is being inflated because companies are trying to counteract the supply chain interruption by overstocking inventories, and as a result, it's causing them to carry working capital that's probably short term, but the buyers think that it should be long term, that the more stock should be there, when in fact it probably really doesn't. And the lack of visibility, utilization, because I think most of the time we're finding the visibility is there, but the users, the customers, the clients really haven't had access or required access to that information. So essentially, the sellers, in many times, are looking to be able to put more inventory in place, or expected to put more inventory in place, which essentially increases their investment and reduces their gain. Yeah. So depending if you're the buyer or the seller, if I'm the seller, I need to be certain that I'm going to be needing to put in working capital that may be greater to counteract the supply chain interruptions. And I think it's the steps that they're taking at the national level now are going to help, but I don't think it's going to be a quick cure. So it's sort of become an ongoing problem.
I agree. It is a long-term solution. It's taken us a long time to get into this problem to begin with. And the supply chains are very complex when you're sourcing product from the other side of the world for U.S. manufacturers. And I think there's no easy fix because all of it is interrelated. A lot of them share resources, whether it's drivers or equipment, containers, shipping vessels. So it's not one simple fix at all, unfortunately. So I agree with you 100%. And I'm glad the supply chain is getting the visibility now in the business community, in the mainstream media, because it's long overdue. And I think companies can take a huge advantage when they actually begin to take the step forward and actually take a more proactive approach to managing those supply chains. So great. Thanks for.
I would add to that we're now, as part of our due diligence procedures, now oftentimes asked to be assessing the supply chain effectiveness and utilization, particularly if it's a new industry or a sub-industry that the buyer is looking to buy, where we're doing the due diligence and looking at some historical performances so that they are not surprised by what they find when they go into and complete the acquisition. And what we're finding is exactly what you all help with, and we help our clients with, is trying to identify what can be done to mitigate the interruptions. And it's not only imports and containers, but it's even domestic production that might be coming with the transportation matters that are there, and the interruption, and client and customer, and suppliers not sharing where their products are with us that we need to help manufacture or sell the product. And as a result, it's a complete focus, and beginning to only touch the surface. Many times what we're finding is that the sellers or the sellers oftentimes don't know what's going on.
Great. Well, listen, John, I appreciate your insight. That's great feedback. And I hope companies start paying attention and take a more proactive mindset, because there's huge benefits to be had when you actually address this from a supply chain perspective. So thanks again, John, for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.